Cory, Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and I am joined by another coaching legend here for Iowa Hawkeye fans, former Iowa assistant coach Gary Close, and any of our, I don't want to call them old-timer fans because that would be a disservice to you, Gary, but certainly you coached at Iowa during a pretty historic time in Iowa basketball history under Dr. Tom Davis. First of all, very excited to have you on here for our post-game shows this year. What's it like to be able to, we'll get into this, but of course your son is now very involved with Iowa basketball, but what's it like to be on the other side now watching college basketball from a fan's perspective?
It's fun. This is always a fun time of the year when everything gets rolling. You've missed watching college basketball, and so today was a good example. There were games on start about 3:00 this afternoon, so I got a good afternoon of watching basketball. Finished up with the Iowa game, and there was some good basketball played in the Big Ten tonight, and it'll continue. This is a fun time of the year.
Absolutely is. And of course, we'll break down this Longwood game here in a moment. But let's catch our listeners up for those who are familiar with you. And of course, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but you were at Iowa and then you coached at Regina.
I did
for a while. And then you moved from there to Bo Ryan's staff. So talk a little bit about that journey and where you and your family are now.
Yeah, Cory. I was at Iowa from 86 to 99. A great run with Coach Davis, and then after that ended, I took 1 year off, and then hooked on at Regina, Iowa City, Regina, right there in Iowa City, and did that for 3 years, and was actually close to taking a Division III head coaching position. And I called Bo about it because he and I had been friends for a long time, and he said, well, he thought it'd be a great opportunity, but he had just had an opening on his staff, and did I want to get back into the Big Ten? Which, of course, I just said, hey, when do I start? And so I was up here for 13 years as well. Finished up in 2016, and then have been doing a little individual small group training with kids anywhere from 6th grade up to college, and it's been fun working kids out, and so kind of semi-retired, I guess you'd call it.
What was the experience like at Regina?
It was fun. It's a terrific school. It's great teachers, great support. Families are strong. It was really neat. We went to the state tournament all 3 years, which was fun, and so I really enjoyed it. It was a neat experience.
So I'll fill our listeners in on how I got acquainted with you, Gary, because we have not known each other until here recently. But of course, everybody who follows our show over at the Iowa at the Voice of College Football channel is familiar with Coach Don Patterson. Really, anybody who followed Iowa football during its heyday, no pun intended there, with Hayden Fry, would know of Don Patterson. Of course, a longtime coach and assistant offensive coordinator for a good period of that time as well with Hayden. But he is the one who recommended Gary to us, and you got to know Don well while you both were coaches at the same time.
Yep.
So let's kind of get your thoughts on Don Patterson. What was your guys' friendship like?
Well, that's you talk about a great tenure when I was with Coach Davis. Those Hayden Fry years, it's pretty neat for me. You grew up watching Big Ten football, and to get a chance to be right there and experience it and watch your team go to Rose Bowls and things like that. And he was obviously a really, really important part of the success of that team. And so I think we'd see each other at iClubs and things like that. It's, that we're kind of separated with, the football complex over there, and we're at Carver. So wasn't a whole lot of time, but had tremendous respect for him and Coach Fry and the whole staff. And when we had a chance to get together, it was a lot of fun. And he's, he had a terrific career.
Absolutely. And he has been a pleasure to work with. And I anticipate the same with you, Gary. So let's talk about this. So obviously kind of opening day across the college football landscape, there were obviously I call them traditional games now involving the likes of Michigan State and Duke and Kansas and those teams. But of course, for Iowa fans, we're kind of tied to the television screen late tonight because a 9 p.m. start was very odd for a Big Ten basketball game at any point in the season. And first half was obviously tremendous, and Iowa carried that into the second half. A lot of offense, maybe more than people expected, although, again, we have to weigh opponent here. So as I do with Don, I'll do the same with you, Gary. What were your initial takeaways from Iowa's 106-73 victory tonight?
Well, I thought they were very sharp. You never know when you have your first game how people are going to react, and nerves, and it's just different. You can scrimmage, you can have exhibition games, but when it really counts, you're curious yourself as a coach how your team's going to react. And I thought right from the opening whistle they were very sharp, and a lot of times early in the season you have problems with turnovers. They did, and their assist to turnover ratio was really, really impressive. I think it was like 3-1. They shared the ball well, shot the ball well, made the extra pass, played solid defense, and so I think for their first game it was a very solid, impressive performance.
It's interesting you brought up turnovers, Gary, because that was what I noticed in the Slippery Rock game. Now, I believe, of course, you were at the game, and I'd have to look back at the stat sheet. There were more turnovers than I thought, but it did seem for this young of a team and how much experience they did lose, they are taking care of the basketball. And that's important given the fact that Joe Toussaint, who's now the leader of this offense, has had issues with turnovers during his career. What are you seeing from Joe and, of course, Aaron Eulis now manning a point position, which has long been headed up by Jordan Bohannon?
Yeah, no, they did a good job. They, in addition, Iowa plays fast, and when you play fast, there's a tendency to have more turnovers as well. There's more possessions, obviously, which will create the opportunity for more turnovers. So I thought all of them did a nice job of handling the ball. Anytime you can score 106 points and only have 8 turnovers that's pretty impressive. Impressive stat.
I have to ask you this question because during the game tonight, and we're going to hear this all season, but BTN made a point of bringing out the fact that Jordan Bohannon has been here during 3 different presidential periods, which is pretty incredible. You retired in 15, am I right?
16. Yeah, 2016.
So you had to be involved in recruiting of Jordan Bohannon, am I right?
A little bit, yeah. We it was kind of interesting. We were recruiting him a little bit. We were actually involved with Peyton Pritchard out at Oregon, and we were right in the running for him. And I remember watching Jordan play in the summer, and if you could just hang on a little bit, I love the way he played. And I think, as I recall, he went down and played in an open gym at Iowa in the fall, right after that junior year, and played really, really well. And Coach McCaffrey offered him, and he jumped at it, which if I were him, I probably would have done the same. And as it turned out, we didn't get Peyton Pritchard, so sometimes things don't work out the way you'd like to. But he's had a phenomenal career. The whole family's I was talking to my wife the other day. I think when we first started recruiting Jason Bohannon, that was in the early, probably 2004, 2005. So I've been watching Bohannon's for, better part of 15, 16 years. I can remember Jordan came up, the whole family came up on Jason's official visit. So I've been around the family a long time. It's a terrific family, and it's great to see him finishing his career on such a high note.
We think he's finishing his career. He keeps.
Well, you never know. Yeah, that's true. He may change the rules. He may be back. I never thought anybody would last longer than Jess Sells, but I finally
I think he's definitely giving Jess a run for his money. But that is incredible to think that. It's not been too long, but we're over 5 years since you retired, Gary, and you were involved, I guess, to a degree with the Jordan Bohannon recruiting. Now, I did hear. To get more some background on you, and we'll, of course, continue to talk about this game, but a little birdie told me that, and they could be wrong on this, but you were more of a big man's coach. You specialized in coaching big men. Is that wrong, or is that a correct notion?
That might be a little inaccurate. I think I like to get involved in all positions. So I didn't actually specialize in one area, but certainly worked with them. I've gotten to really enjoy working with kids with shooting, going way back. It's always been kind of thing that I've enjoyed doing and working with. So, but I think one of the beauties of coaching is getting involved with kids and seeing them get better. That's probably as much as an area that I enjoyed of any of coaching is working out with kids and watching them improve and reaching their goals, and some getting the chance to play at the next level. It's pretty neat.
I asked that too, Gary, because and I'll sell him out. Don was thinking you kind of specialized in big men, but I also wanted to ask that question because, and you retired at a time where Wisconsin had, I mean, not that Bo Ryan didn't have his share of success, but I mean, you guys had an immense amount of success right before you retired.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're talking Final Four, right? In
2015. Yeah, back to back. Yep.
Two back to back. Incredible. And Frank Kaminsky is someone who I'm sure you were very close to.
Yeah.
How did Frank? We always heard comparisons between Frank and Luka, and I see a lot of.
I think it's a good comparison. Yeah, especially the way they improved. Frank hardly played at all his freshman and sophomore years. A little bit of sophomore year, and then he took a big jump his junior year, and another big jump his senior year. Wasn't heavily recruited coming out of high school, but worked really hard on his game. He grew late, and so he played a lot of guard growing up. So he could really handle the ball well, and then he grew into being a bigger guy. But he could always shoot and handle the ball, and what he did, Cory, he just kept adding things to his game, whether it be a post move or he was a terrific passer. He could handle the ball. Really neat to see. He ended up being the National Player of the Year his senior year. So when we talk about Keegan Murray, that's those kind of jumps can really put a bolt into your program and really take it to a different level. Because if you're gonna compete for Final Fours, you got to have pros on your roster, and we were fortunate that we had a few during that run, and Frank was one of them. Frank now is continuing to play with the Phoenix Suns and doing a nice job off the bench. So he's a really good success story.
All right, you mentioned Keegan Murray. This would be a good segue into his day tonight. I thought he just looked spectacular. Again, all of this has to be sort of regulated with the understanding that this is against Longwood. But 8 of 10, very efficient. And I was the most impressed, I think, with his 3-point shooting. I don't have his I can grab his 3-point stats.
I think he was 3 for 4 from 3, 5 for 5 from the free throw line, and 8 from 10 overall. What I've got, so and he had 5 blocks. So he had 7 rebounds. He played both ends of the court. He's got a chance to be really good. It's going to be fun to watch. Now, as he gets playing stiffer competition, he's going to move up to where he's going to be the featured guy. They're going to put the top defender on him and things like that. So his game's going to have to continue to evolve, but certainly a great start.
Now, I know that coaches, especially Fran, will hate the preseason NBA mock drafts, and I understand they mean nothing at this point.
Yeah.
When I started hearing the rumblings last year of Keegan showing up in those, despite the fact that he was number 4, 5, maybe even number 6 on Iowa's squad last year, that kind of makes you furrow your brow a bit. And I kind of didn't buy into it. And certainly, again, way too early to be making grandiose statements based on one performance. But his body seems to have, just from my vantage point, it seems to have really developed as well. What do you see physically from him?
Yeah, and I think that's probably what NBA guys are looking at and trying to project. He's got good size. He's long. He's athletic. He's got a big frame that'll continue to add strength to. And so now it's just a question of, as we talked about with Frank, just adding parts to his game that can get him to the next level. And you talked about his 3-point shooting. The NBA is obviously a league that shoots a lot of threes, so that's going to be important. And he's off to a great start in that area. And then you got to remember he's only a sophomore, so that's exciting that he's barely started his sophomore year, and off to a great start and should be fun to watch all year long.
Iowa fans, I think I can speak for most. The frustrations in recent time, and obviously, if you want to generalize this, last year specifically, just falling short of expectations in the postseason. But I guess we can address the elephant in the room, Gary. You were, I'm assuming, a pretty darn good defensive coach. I mean, you did coach with a pretty darn good defensive staff at Wisconsin. Iowa has not had the reputation of being a great offensive. Well, since at least the years of Utah. Of course, you coached Jared Utah, right? But Adam Woodbury, Mike Gasol, those guys, this team has not been very good defensively at any point. How can the increase in athleticism this year make up for those issues defensively?
Well, it obviously helps. I mean, if you're quicker, if you're longer, you can cover up mistakes a little bit easier. And so that's a start. It'll be interesting to see because when you get into tournament situations, when you're playing really good teams and teams are well scouted and things like that, and the same thing as you get into the Big Ten race, you got to get stops at your end to give you a chance to win when the offense is not working. There are going to be nights when you're not going to make threes. There are going to be nights when you don't shoot a high percentage, right. And on those nights, your defense has got to carry and give you a chance to win the game, and then hopefully you can make enough plays at the end of the game to get yourself a win and advance on a night when maybe you're not at your best offensively, because every team is going to go through that. So we always try to get our team in a position to be able to win the game and not be out of the game, especially against good teams and especially on the road coming down the stretch. And in most cases, that's the defense that can do that for you.
One game in, do you see anything different defensively? We heard pre-game, I guess, if you will, from Fran that Iowa would be trying to use its depth to its advantage defensively to be able to press more, be more aggressive. Do you see anything differently reading between the lines of game one?
Not really. It's early. I think their length in both the games that I watched. Now the teams, as we talked about the caliber of teams you got to consider, but their length bothered both the teams, the exhibition game as well as tonight. They're long, and so that's a hard thing to duplicate when you're trying to put in a scouting report or walk through situations where, hey, this is what Iowa does, and you can't duplicate Keegan Murray at 6'9" with long arms. You just can't do it. So, coach has talked about a lot of depth. In the non-conference, it's usually a little bit easier to play people. And then when you get into the league, then sometimes the benches start to get a little bit shorter as the competition on a daily basis, on night in, night out basis gets stronger. So that'll be interesting to watch. They look like they're committed to playing guys, which you've got to do if you're going to be real aggressive and use pressure defense like we did with Coach Davis. We tried to use 8, 9, 10 guys. You just can't press the whole game with 7 or 8 guys. You're going to run out of gas, and especially if you're pushing the ball at the other end. So it'll be interesting to see. But for the first 2 games that we've seen, they've done a nice job. We'll see how it goes as the competition increases as the season goes along.
Absolutely. And I guess we should have probably addressed this too. Were you on the Iowa? I'd have to look back at the years. Were you on the Iowa staff during Kenyon's time here?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What's
taught Kenyon everything he knows.
compare the players. I mean, I know they're totally different, but compare father.
Kenyon was a great recruit for us. Rich Walker deserved a lot of credit. We went into Michigan and got him out of there, and that was not easy to do. And he came into a really good situation in terms of the type of teams we've had, and he was a phenomenal defensive player. He had great anticipation. He's not as tall as his 2 sons, but he had length, even though he's probably 6'5", 6'6". But we played him at the 3, and he was terrific up in the front in our full court pressure. Maybe one of the best we had at that position. And then his offensive game developed, and of course he had a terrific, great kid, great player. Won a lot of games at Iowa. It's hard to believe there's two players on that team now that I coach their dads, which is kind of a scary thought, to tell you the truth. Amazing how time flies.
Makes you feel old, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
I know we're jumping all over the place, but you and I have never really been able to have these conversations in the past, so forgive me. But what was it like? I mean, I know this is almost a rhetorical question because I don't remember. I was far too young at the time. But what was it like during I guess after Chris Street's passing? I mean, how difficult was that? I mean, obviously it was just devastating.
Yeah, it was brutal. You still think about it, even things, you see things that just remind you of the whole situation. It was a really, really difficult time that affected all of us and still does, to this very day. When I saw the Streets on Friday night, which it was great to see them again, and the Iowa program has done a wonderful job keeping them involved in the program. I love coming back and playing in the Chris Street Golf Tournament in the fall, and we have unbelievable turnout with alumni and raise money for the foreign trip that the basketball team takes every 4 years. But to keep them involved in the program, I know it's important to them and important to us that that his legacy remains at the forefront, because he really did have an incredible impact all across the state, the way he played, the type of kid he was, and it was a real tough deal, no doubt about it.
For me, I know my age again. That does not stand out just because I was too young. But I just know if I had been alive at the what year would that have been?
1993. I
wasn't even alive yet.
Yeah.
But had I been alive and obviously an Iowa fan at the time, I would have probably put that right up there with Kobe Bryant's death. At least for someone who follows sports, those moments where you remember, because I know everyone in my family who was alive remembers exactly where they were when the news broke. I'm sure you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And so it is nice to see his legacy being honored. Obviously, Kenyon has, to a degree, honored his legacy with naming of Chris. And I guess
no doubt.
Nicely into Chris, in the conversation about him. You and I spoke a little bit about him prior to going live here, Gary. But, Chris, I think, I don't want to say rivals the athleticism of Keegan Murray, but has some of the similar physical traits. Where did you see his game progress game 1 and 2, obviously first being an exhibition, and where does he still need to improve?
Yeah, the exhibition game, he got into foul trouble pretty quickly and didn't get to play a whole lot, which happens a lot with younger kids. They're getting in there trying to be active and make something happen, and they get a little over aggressive and can draw fouls. I thought he played pretty solidly tonight. I know he made at least 1 3, and he got some rebounds. So I think they had to be pleased with. I think it was a step forward, and it's almost, as we talked about, it's really like his freshman year. He didn't play a whole lot last year, so he's just kind of getting his feet wet. But if he can come on like his brother did last year, then that'll be a huge jolt to their depth, and so it'll be interesting to see.
Have you coached twins before?
No, not that I can remember. Not off the top of my head. I don't think so. No.
Yeah, because I do wonder how many of you've got to have similar athleticism there, right?
Oh yeah, I would think so. Now he's one's left-handed and the other one's right-handed,
right?
Which is a little bit different, but
that is odd. But I think
that's probably the only way the coaches could tell them apart is when they shoot the ball. Oh, that's got to be Chris. He's left-handed.
If I recall, the Morris twins were also right and left-handed. Am I correct in saying that? Kansas? You
might be right. I don't know. They were good though. I know that.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I said last year as well, Gary, was, man, if you can even get a quarter or a half of the production you're getting from Keegan next year from Chris, man, that just elevates everything. And so I guess the verdict is still out on that.
Sure.
But he's got the physical attributes. I like what I'm seeing right now from Philip Rebracha early, and he didn't play a whole lot late in the first half, came in more in the second, but his initial energy is something that stands out. And he's got a bit, I don't want to say an unorthodox game, but I wonder if it's some of that's the foreign flavor. And of course, his dad had a pretty successful NBA career with the Pistons, I believe.
Yeah.
What do you see from Philip?
Yeah, I think he's got a chance. He's got he reminds me a little bit of Frank. He's got a little Frank in him. Looks like he's a pretty good passer. Looks like he's a smart player, knows what he's doing, and probably picks things up pretty quickly. And he's going to be critical, because that's obviously a big shoes they're replacing there. That's you don't have players like that come along very often. So, but he's going to be fun to watch. I think he's got some traits that tell you that he's got a chance to develop into a pretty good player.
And of course, this is just the start of a number of very winnable games that all of these guys will be able to get more and more comfortable. Chris being one, obviously Rebracha. I'm a little bit surprised, and maybe there's an injury that I don't know about to Josh Ogundele, but he didn't see the floor tonight. I don't have any insider information as to why he didn't see the floor. Were you surprised by that, Gary? Or, I looked like he was in sweats on the sideline.
Yeah, maybe he tweaked something, practice something. Yeah, I was surprised he didn't play at all, just with the way the score was, and he had played in the exhibition game. So I'm guessing maybe there's something there that they didn't want to take a chance on being an early season game.
Now, with that being said, looking back at the exhibition, and again, maybe he was dealing with something at the time. I mean, Riley Mulvey and Josh Ogundele both didn't come into that game until at least the latter part of the first half, and I don't believe they were in that initial 10, maybe even not even the initial 11.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not playing right now, maybe Fran will go 11 deep. But if you're not playing a true five, this is going to be a totally different look once we get into Big Ten play, Gary. I mean, you talked about Luka Garza. Jack Nunge obviously was a bigger guy. For him, Ryan Kriener was a true five in my mind. So it had many years, like obviously Adam Woodbury and Gabe Olashaney. We haven't seen small ball. So can Fran run with no true five during the Big Ten season?
I think so, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do it. A lot of it depends on how those guys develop. And they're long. They may not be as tall, but Patrick's long. Obviously, both Murray boys are long. So they've got some length that might take up for maybe they're not as tall as some of the others might be. But that'll be interesting. The development of their center position, and then would they move Murray down to the five and go smaller and more athletic, depending on matchups, depending on who they're playing. That's kind of neat. That gives them a little bit of versatility in how they want to play, depending on who they're playing and how each individual is playing. Some nights you go with a hot hand, and maybe they will go with a smaller lineup. And
you can kind of correct me here. I'm taking it from my non-coaching mindset, Gary, but I do look at matchups down the road with the likes of, I don't know, Illinois.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to get by with playing Rebracha at the five. Am I wrong there? Not against Kofi Coburn.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, no, there are some. Michigan's got a big guy. There are some size in the league that can cause problems. That we'll have to see. And maybe there's a game where you play zone to maybe to offset a physical matchup that you may not be real strong at, or so that's going to be, in a lot of cases, that's where you worry about is more defensively, how you match up defensively at those positions rather than offensively.
Yeah, and Kofi Coburn comes to mind. Trevion Williams comes to mind. Your Badgers always seem to have. I mean, I know Micah Potter is back, right?
No, he's gone. The only senior that came back was Davidson. Yeah, the rest of them are gone.
I forget Micah. So who is the big man then? Is it Reward?
They've got a couple of young guys that I don't really know much about. One kid's name is Kroll, I think, Crowl. And there's another kid. I didn't get a chance to see them play tonight because they were on that Big Ten Plus network, but they won easily. So they're kind of in the same boat. They they were really strong and deep at that position last year, and Potter's gone as well as Reavers, so they've got some work to do to fill that spot as well.
I'm just curious while we're on it, what was your relationship like with Greg Gard?
Well, coached with him for a long time. He was we were assistants for a while, and then of course he got the head job. So, geez, I was with him 13, 14 years. So he's done a nice job there, and kind of continued the tradition of Coach Ryan, and he coached with him at Platteville and Milwaukee. So it's been fun to watch.
And as you can tell, I don't go scripted with these shows. I'll hit another Wisconsin subject while we're on it. There's not many Iowa fans that like Brad Davison. I don't think there's many Big Ten fans that like Brad Davison. Now, that's a compliment to some degree to Brad Davison.
Yeah.
But there is a stigma across the league that Brad is a dirty player. Do you care to dispel that or address that? What are your thoughts on Brad?
Well, I knew him a little bit. We did recruit him a little bit before I left, and I really enjoyed him as a kid and as a person. You've seen some of the things on the court that make you wonder a little bit, but every interaction I've had with him, I've really enjoyed him. I think he's the type of player that if he's on your team, you like, and then when he's not, you don't. And there are players like that all through the league and all through the country. But he's had a terrific career, and I think he's going to be important for him this year, being the only senior coming back.
Was Jeff Moe kind of like that for Iowa?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. You can go through all the teams and you can find guys that kind of got underneath your skin a little bit that you didn't that maybe you didn't like when you were playing against them. But
Aaron Kraft.
Aaron Kraft was a good example. Yeah, all he did was win games.
Right.
And Brad's done the same thing. Jeff did the same thing. Jeff was a guy that could come off the bench and give us a lift and give us some emotion, and Chris Kingsbury, he had a little bit of a reputation of stretching the rules a little bit, but I sure like coaching him. I liked him. I liked having him on my team. So I think if Brad Davis was wearing black and gold, the Hawkeye fans would probably like him. But I can understand why they don't. Just because he's not on their team.
It will be interesting, Gary, to see if Iowa has a guy like that. Is it Connor McCaffrey? Connor, I don't know what to make of Connor defensively. I think he's a little bit disadvantaged just with lateral quickness. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but he doesn't have maybe some of the quickness that a guy like Brad has defensively, but he is also just kind of an edgy guy. Do you see anybody else in this roster? Maybe it's Connor or someone else that can be kind of that bulldog for Iowa.
I think he'd probably be the one that would jump out at you right away. He's the kind of guy that's going to be on the floor. I think just the way he plays, he takes care of the ball. He's a terrific passer, maybe one of the best post passers in the league. Now they probably won't emphasize a post as much this year as they did with Garza last year, so maybe that makes him not as important because of that. But takes care of the ball, plays solid defense, knows how to play the game. I can't see him not playing significant minutes just because he does the things that you need to win games, and then the experience. I mean, you can't take the experience away. He's been in a lot of games on a lot of different courts and won a lot of games, and coaches like experience. They like putting guys out there they can trust and have proven to them that they can do the things they want to get done. So I'd be surprised if he doesn't. If he's healthy, I'd be surprised if he doesn't get significant minutes, whether it's off the bench or starting.
Bit of an injury scare tonight. He went down hard, I believe, on at least the commentators were saying that it was the same hip that was repaired surgically in the offseason. I don't know if that's a fact or not, but
tell me about that. I really don't know a whole lot about that.
My understanding of the procedure is he had very similar to what Jordan had, where he had to have the bone, I don't know, sawed down or however they do that. Gary, although I don't really know, and I don't know that Fran's ever really addressed it forwardly, but he was playing through a lot of the season last year with the hip issue. And I've seen more and more collegiate athletes deal with that specific injury. Have you noticed that in recent years, Gary?
Not really, but it wouldn't surprise me with, hitting the floor as hard as some people do and taking hits on your hip. That sounds like something that could certainly happen. Taking charges, getting knocked down. I can see that being a problem.
He went down on that hip, and then later in the game looked like his ankle didn't really, that I could see, turn. It almost looked like just an impact. The floor, maybe a tweak of the ankle there.
Yeah, maybe. So they'll probably, because of that, bring them along a little slower than they might otherwise. And they're fortunate they've got some guards that give them some depth there where they can do that. But he's got some intangibles that have won a lot of games that coaches like.
So the real Hayden comments, he says Connor needs to make a better percentage of threes this year. He did make a 3 as the shot clock expired tonight, Gary, but that has been one of the more frustrating things for me that, teams don't, you look at Connor and Joe, and of course Connor's probably not going to be running the point a whole lot this year, but you got Connor, who's not a threat to drive really, but he also isn't a threat really to hit threes. Joe Toussaint, kind of the same issue, although he can drive, but if you're not a threat to shoot threes, doesn't that really limit you offensively? Because if you're a defender, you can play him totally different than I won't give Carson Edwards, he's kind of a generational type of player, but with this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously the more weapons you've got, the more ways you can beat somebody, it makes you harder to defend. And, last year he didn't have to because they had so many shooters around him, whether it was Wieskamp or Bohannon or Frederick, and even guards that could shoot the 3 and Murray a little bit, so that it wasn't as big a need as it might be this year. Time will tell. We'll just have to wait and see. But he does a lot of things that win games that don't show up in the box score a lot. That I think will keep him on the court, and that'll depend upon too how the guards around him develop. Competition's good. I mean, competition brings out the best in everybody. So, that'll be interesting to see how, Joe develops and the other guards to where they force more minutes. That's the interesting dynamic as you watch a team develop.
Connor has a bit of an odd stroke. I've always thought that. He doesn't have a shooter stroke, does he, Gary? I mean, the kind of left foot forward. I mean, he's just got an odd. To me, I'll just be honest. He's got an odd stroke for a coach's son. I'll just say it.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look too bad to me. I got to probably see it a little more up close. I haven't seen enough of them to really evaluate it, but we'll have to take a closer look at it.
Okay, Real Hayden also says he's got a man crush on the Murray twins. If Keegan shoots the way he did tonight for the season, he really is going to have to make a business decision at the end of the year in this draft. And, of course, I prefaced this whole conversation with this is all about opponent, and we're going to see a lot of, I don't want to say dominance from Keegan here early in the season, Gary, but I don't expect any of these teams, although I guess we can finish our show by talking about the upcoming schedule. And if I can remember this correctly, I believe Missouri-Kansas City lost to Minnesota today, but it was not a blowout. It was a 15-point game. How much do you read into that? Can we really look at that and say, well, maybe it's a decent Kangaroos team? Or
this time of the year, you just never know. You saw Ohio State had to make a shot with less than a second to win their game. Indiana almost got beat. The two teams they played were pretty solid basketball teams. I don't know have no idea how Missouri Kansas City is. Minnesota is obviously in a developmental situation with what they lost from a transfer standpoint, but you get into early games, you just never know how it's all going to go. And we saw tonight in the Big Ten with a couple teams that almost got knocked off. Ohio State probably should have been knocked off, and Indiana went right down to the wire. I think there's a lot of mid majors out there that can put a hurting on you if you're not ready to play. And but I don't know if Missouri Kansas will be one of those. We'll have to see. I don't know a whole lot about them.
Well, I'll just say this as sort of a reference for everybody, and maybe this excites people a little bit more about the schedule. So Minnesota did beat Kansas City 71-56, so by no means a blowout.
No.
This, though, Nebraska
lost.
Western Illinois, who Iowa plays later on this season, Gary.
Coached by Rob Jeter, who I coached with at Wisconsin for a couple of years before he left and went to Milwaukee. So they'll play a little bit like Wisconsin plays. That's a heck of a win for him. You go into a Big Ten school and beat them on their court. And there were people talking Nebraska up a little bit with some of the transfers I think they had gotten. And I really haven't taken a close look at their roster, but that's a huge win for them and a tough loss for Nebraska for sure.
Absolutely. And Fred Hoiberg, what are we in now? Are we in year 3 or 4?
At least.
So, I mean, you're starting to get to the point where you got to start winning. I mean,
it's a tough job. Nebraska's a tough job. It's there's not a lot of players in Nebraska year in and year out. So you got to go hunting outside your borders a little bit, and facilities are unbelievable. But the league is obviously brutal. It's a tough job that he's got his work cut out for him. But they've talked about having they with some of the transfers they've got that this was going to could be an upswing for them. But it just goes to show you early in the year you just don't know what's going to happen. It's crazy, and that's why you see Iowa win as convincingly as they did and as well as they played. You got to be encouraged. That's a nice solid performance. I don't know how good Longwood is, but they've traditionally been a pretty decent team.
Okay.
We could throw out the trivia question I threw out to you to the callers. There was a terrific NBA player, I think a 10-year veteran that played at Longwood. So they've had some players there and they've had some success. So to beat them as well as they beat them, really basically from start to finish, is a good start for Iowa.
Yeah. So if anybody knows who that NBA player who played at Longwood, of course, anybody can.
I think you're going to give him 2 free tickets to the next game. Is that what I heard?
Oh yeah. What game? You said the game. I'll give him 2 free tickets to a game. It may not be an Iowa game.
There you go.
But yes, some history there. And I was going to mention, so we talked about Western Illinois, who's on Iowa's schedule, beating Nebraska. UMKC playing Minnesota close. And how about this? Portland State was up on Oregon State at halftime. Beavers ended up finding a way to survive 73-64, but Portland State is the team that Iowa plays later this season.
Those are three interesting games for sure.
Absolutely. Question here for you from one of our listeners, Doug Moore, says, can a team have an 11-man rotation? Fran seems to pride himself on, he loves to talk about how deep his teams are, which is great. He's hyping up his bench, but that is a question I would have as well. What are your thoughts on it, Gary?
Well, I think it'd be difficult. I think it'd be especially difficult as you get into the league and, where the competition really amps up but I think what you want to try to do at this time of the year is to get as many people involved, because you don't have as many answers now as you do later on. And so can it stay that deep? A lot of it's just going to depend upon how everybody develops. And in some cases, maybe you can get to that many. It's rare. But even if you can get to 8, 9, or 10, that's pretty deep. 11 is really deep. He obviously feels there's not a whole lot of difference in there, that he's got to keep looking. And that's kind of a fun situation to have as a coach, is is who can help us and who's going to develop, and because it's a long year, and then you get injuries and you have foul trouble and things like that. So the deeper you are, obviously the better your chances are. So I'll be curious myself to see. Usually the rotation is longer during the non-conference. Then you start getting into conference play, and it starts to shrink up a little bit as you get into league games, and the competition gets so much tougher.
I still think the only guy, I know we talked about it earlier, I think the only guy on this team that can defend one-on-one against Kofi Coburn is Josh Ogundele, just given his girth. Now, I could be wrong on that. Maybe Riley Mulvey steps into a role there where he can come in for spot minutes. The real Hayden has the answer to your trivia question, and he is correct.
Wow, so, that's impressive.
Jerome Curry. We don't know if he Googled this, Gary, but
he might have.
I'll have to give him an IOU on those 2 free tickets. All right. Final stat I wanted to put up here tonight, and then we're going to let Gary go because it is it's minute till midnight. So we appreciate you jumping on.
Way past my bedtime.
You brought up 3-point shooting. This should be encouraging to fans, regardless of opponent. 13. Do I have that correct? I think it was better than that. Maybe I have a typo there. Let me look at that again. I think it might have been 33. Let me look at that.
They shot well everywhere. Where's my stats?
I have that wrong. It's 15. Now I'm looking at the unofficial box score. I don't have the official one from the university yet.
Yeah, 15 for 33. That's what I have. And I got 19 for 22 from the free throw line, which is really strong. And they shot 55% overall. So I think the one area that it's hard to find any areas of concern, but in both games, they gave up a lot of offensive rebounds. Now, the teams missed a lot of shots, but you can't give up 17 offensive rebounds to a team like Michigan or any team in the Big Ten and be successful. So I think that's one area that they're gonna focus in on, that they've got to clean that up a little bit.
And these are not big teams they're playing. These are
no, and I think sometimes when you're not playing big teams and you're long and you're athletic, that's where your fundamentals get a little. You just turn around and go jump, and you don't screen out as well and don't rotate as well, and things like that can hurt your offense rebound. And it's also, they're missing a lot of shots, so their chances of getting offensive rebounds go up just because there's more shots that are being missed. So that's a credit to your defense, but you gotta clean that up. We always say that defense ends with the rebound, and they gave up 17 tonight, and I think the team they played on Friday was in double figures, Slippery Rock. So yeah, that's one area that they're probably looking for areas they can point out. That would be one that they got to get better at, especially as the competition gets stronger.
Now, is that a concern for you moving forward too, because of the fact that Iowa doesn't have necessarily a 5 that's got a lot of experience, or maybe will even be playing regular? If you're playing small ball, I know I've always been taught that rebounding is about will and determination primarily, but size has something to do with it, right? So are you concerned with Rebraca kind of being the biggest guy on the court at times?
Well, it may be, but again, that's where you got to be. Rebounding, a lot of it starts with your defense. If they're taking bad shots, then you got a better chance of rebounding. If you're not giving up quick shots, you got a better chance of rebounding. And then fundamentally screening out and things like that. So, if your defense gets broke down where people got to rotate, and all of a sudden there's people on the backside that are having a harder time checking people out. So rebounding is a part of the whole defensive scheme. But I know I've had rebounders that are not very tall that were a great rebounder. Nigel Hayes was a great rebounder, and he was about 6'8".
Yeah.
We had great rebounders. We had great rebounders at Iowa that were not. Jess Settles was a great rebounder. He's about 6'7". So, you got to be tough. You got to be physical. You got to go get the ball. And so
Reggie Evans was
a terrific rebounder. Yeah, when you win by what they won by and shot like they shot, it's hard to find anything that's really a negative. But if we had to be real picky, that might be.
They let up defensively a little bit in the second half. Am I right on that?
That's understandable when you're up that big. It's hard to it's hard to keep. Coaches don't want to say that, but it's hard to keep your concentration for 4 minutes when you're taking it to somebody. But
those are the moments in the second half, Gary, where me as an Iowa guy, I want to see Fran out there yelling at kids. But at the same time, like you said, when you're up 40,
right, yeah. Well, it'll give them some clips on their teaching tape that they can show that'll hey, we still got areas we got to improve in. And that's the key thing. You want to win, you want to play well, but then you want to keep getting better. That's the crucial thing. So that when the Big Ten season rolls around, which now, of course, it happens earlier with those games in December, right. you gotta keep improving through the course of the year to give yourself a chance to really do something special. And so that'll be one area we can look at is do they get a little bit better on the defensive boards?
Gary, in less than 3 weeks, Iowa goes on the road to play Virginia. So it's going to get
beat tonight.
Did they really?
Yeah, Virginia got beat tonight.
Who'd they play?
They played somebody. They played Colgate, and Colgate's pretty good.
Colgate's good.
Colgate was an NCAA tournament team last year, and they're good. So that's not a total shock, but it was at home. And
Gary, I'm seeing they lost to Navy tonight.
Oh, Navy. Yeah, Colgate beat somebody.
Did they? Okay. They are a good team, though. They're a tournament.
Yeah, no, Navy's coached by the guy that used to coach at Penn State, I believe. Ed DeChellis, is he a Navy still?
Oh, DeChellis. Okay.
He might still be a Navy. That's a good win for him. Yeah, no, it was Navy. You're right. Yeah.
And that's on the road at Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a good thing or does it really matter? I mean, Virginia's a top 25 team, so that will likely knock them out. And they won't probably be back in for the Iowa game.
Yeah.
So, that's disappointing a little bit as I would think that you would want Virginia to keep winning.
We played Virginia. That is not an easy place to play. That'll be a huge challenge. And they're obviously well coached and play phenomenal defense. So that'll be a big challenge for them. That's a little ways down the road.
Final comment here from the real Hayden. He says that Mulvey seems stuck in the mud with his feet on D. I will say this about Riley Mulvey. My understanding of him in high school, and I've watched very limited amount of tape of him, but his biggest improvement needs to be on offense. And that's encouraging to me because you come to Iowa, and now I could be totally wrong on this as well, Gary. You can call me out for it if I am. But if I'm Iowa, I would rather Fran be recruiting defensive-minded guys as opposed to offensive-minded players. No offense to guys like Jordan Bohannon, but to me, Fran's going to make a guy better offensively. I just don't personally have any confidence that Fran's going to really make a guy better defensively. So I understand this is one game in, and Riley, he is 17 years old. He's a reclassified high schooler. He should be playing his senior year in high school. So.
Is that right? Yeah. Well, big guys are really hard to evaluate. When they were watching Luka Garza play as a freshman, they might have thought the same thing. I know people were crazy. Why did you even think about recruiting a guy like Frank Kaminsky? He couldn't get off the bench his first couple of years. Big guys just develop usually a little bit slower rates, and it just takes them a while to get it going. So we got to give him a little bit of time. He's, as you said, 17 years old. He's a youngster.
Absolutely. A couple housekeeping items here as we head off. Again, we want to extend our appreciation for Gary hanging out with us late in the evening. Again, we will be here the majority of the games. Again, can't guarantee every game. And I think I told you this, Gary, when we had a conversation here about a week or so ago. I have a surgery coming up on my right shoulder in a week.
Oh.
So the game next Tuesday, which I believe is North Carolina Central, I will likely be very woozy. I won't be in the hospital at the time. It's an outpatient surgery. But I likely will not be doing a post game.
You won't be at the top of your game.
So, no, I probably will not be at the top of my game. And, of course, you have other obligations. And one thing we didn't mention to our listeners, Gary, talk about what your son is doing for the University of Iowa.
My son is helping the basketball program out at Iowa. He's a manager. I think he helps with a video. He's loving it. Thinks it's just having a great time. Loves the players, loves the staff. He's debating whether he wants to be a coach, trying to convince him not to, but he had played Division III basketball at St. Thomas, and it was hard for him to hang up the shoes, so to speak. But this is the next best thing, and to be a part of a really good Division I program, he's thrilled, and we are too. It gives us a chance to get back to Iowa City a lot more than we would normally, and we're looking forward to getting down to a lot of games.
It's a lot of driving, Gary. How many hours is that there and back?
It's an easy less than 3 hour drive. It's not bad at all. It's all downhill both ways.
3 hours. Now it is. I'm guessing it's a pretty drive, right?
Yeah, it's a nice drive. I told Jordan Bohannon when I was recruiting him that I would get 151 4 lanes all the way from Marion, Iowa to Madison, so that it would be an easy drive, and we got it done. So it's 4 lane all the way to Highway 1, so it's really not a bad job. And I used to drive 4.5, 5 to watch Sam play up at St. Thomas in Minnesota. So this feels like a much quicker drive. So
awesome.
Not bad.
Well, again, we'll be here the majority of the season for Iowa Postgame with From the Hawkeye of the Storm and Coach Gary Close. And a reminder, everybody, the next Iowa game will be Friday, 7:01 p.m. BTN Plus only. And then, of course, the following game will be that game where gets North Carolina Central on the following Tuesday. And we will be back over at the Iowa channel for a live postgame following Iowa, Minnesota this weekend. With
That's a big game. That's a big game.
It's do or die. It's Iowa, and of course, Wisconsin is the one threat right now for Iowa. Well, I shouldn't say the one threat, but if Wisconsin doesn't lose again, Iowa can't win the West. But Wisconsin could lose again. So every one of these games is important. If Iowa wins out, they've still got a shot at the West. So hopefully Iowa fans are primed and ready for that and for the post game. And Gary, we will talk to you again soon, and we appreciate the time tonight.
Glad to do it. It was fun.
All right, for Coach Gary Close, I'm Cory Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We will talk to you soon.